Name's Warren Holloway. I'm 74 years old, and if you'd told me at 70 that I'd be saying this to you from a little apartment in Bangkok, Thailand, I'd have checked your math for you, free of charge, and found the mistake. I kept books for a living, 41 years of it, in Tyler, Texas, East Texas, the piney part, where the roses come from. I did the books for a lumber yard and a couple of car lots and a rose nursery, and toward the end, the funeral home, which is a job you learn not to make small talk about at supper. I was the fella who made other people's numbers tell the truth. And I'll tell you what that does to a man over 40 years. It makes him allergic to wishful thinking. You show me a plan built on hope, and I'll show you where it doesn't. Carry the two. So I want to talk to you like I'd have talked to a client, because I've got a feeling about who's watching. I think some of you are sitting at a kitchen table right now, maybe with a cup of coffee going cold, doing a kind of arithmetic you don't say out loud. The Social Security check, and then the property tax. Notice, and the insurance, and the light bill that got bigger again, and you're moving the same numbers around hoping they'll land somewhere different than they landed last month. And they don't. I know that table. I sat at it. Here's the part nobody warns you about. It isn't the money that gets you. It's the quiet. Dolores, my wife, she passed 5 years back. 44 years we were married. And a house that's had 2 people in it for that long, when it goes down to 1, it doesn't just get emptier, it gets louder somehow. Every little tick of it, I'd pour 2 cups of coffee in the morning out of pure habit and then stand there, looking at the second one like a fool. The kids were grown and gone, my boy Dale up in Dallas, busy, good to me, but busy. I retired at 68 because the firm got bought and the new people wanted software instead of an old man with a pencil. And there I was, healthy enough, careful with my money, and with not one single reason to get up before the sun, which after 50 years of getting up before the sun turns out to be its own kind of problem. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm the last man on earth who wants it. I'm telling you because I think a lot of you know exactly the room I'm describing. Now, there's a thing about me you'd need to know to make sense of the rest. When I was 20 years old, I was a finance clerk in the United States Army, a bookkeeper in a uniform, which is about as much war as they let. A fellow with my eyes get near. And in 1972, they gave me 9 days of leave, and I spent them in Bangkok. 9 days, half a century ago. And I have thought about those 9 days. I am not exaggerating, every single week of my life since. I've got a photograph, black and white, creased up soft as cloth from being carried. It's me at 20 on the front of a longtail boat on the river here, grinning like somebody just told me the best joke I'd ever hear. I don't even remember who took it. I kept that picture in a drawer in Tyler for 50 years, and about once a season I'd take it out and look at that kid and think, well, that was something, wasn't it? The winter after Dolores passed, I took it out and I didn't put it back. I want to be honest with you about what kind of man does what I did, because it isn't the man you'd guess. It isn't the bold one. The bold ones talk about it their whole lives and die in the same zip code. It was a careful man that finally went. A fella who'd spent 40 years proving that the numbers either work or they don't, and there's no feelings about it. Because one night that winter, I couldn't sleep, and I did the thing I do when I can't sleep. I got a yellow legal pad off the top of the refrigerator, and I sat down at that. 2 quiet kitchen table, and I started running the figures. Not on a client, on me. On what was left of my one life. I wrote my income down the left side the way I've done 10,000 times. And then, for the first time in my life, instead of writing Tyler, Texas at the top of the expense column, I wrote a different word. I wrote Bangkok, just to see if the man who'd caught me being a fool for 50 years could catch me. Now, I'll tell you the rest of what that pad said, but not yet. Because if I lead with the number, you'll do what everybody does. You'll decide it's too good to be true, or you'll decide it's not for somebody like you, and you'll click off and go pour that second cup of coffee for nobody. So let me do it the way I do it right. Let me show you the work. Let me take you back to those 9 days, because they're the whole root of it. 1972. I was 20, skinny as a fence post, and I'd never been anywhere that wasn't Texas or an army base that smelled like one, and they turned me loose in Bangkok. I remember stepping off in the heat, just leaning on me like a big warm hand on the back of my neck, and the smell, which I have never once forgotten. Charcoal smoke and something sweet frying in the brown river and flowers all at once. I remember the temples, the gold of them, so bright in that sun it made your eyes water. I remember a woman at a food stall laughing at me kindly, mind you, because I didn't know how to eat what she'd handed me, and then showing me patient as a school teacher, no English between us at all, just her hands and mine, 9 days, and then they shipped me back, and I came home and I did what you're supposed to do. Married Dolores in 75, had Dale, kept the books, coached a little league, buried my folks. Good life, a real one, I'm not knocking it. But you know how a song gets stuck? Bangkok was stuck, and I filed it where a careful man files the things he wants but can't justify under someday, which I have since learned is the one account that never pays out unless you make it. After Dolores and after they retired me, whether I liked it or not, some days started knocking pretty loud, so I did what I know how to do. I researched it to death. I got on one of those expat forums on the computer, grown men, most of them older than me, comparing notes about visas and hospitals and the price of a chicken, and I lurked on that thing for the better part of a year. I didn't post, I read, because I've watched too many people fall in love with a brochure. I wanted the complaints. I wanted the fellow who moved and hated it and came home, and I found him too, and I read every word he wrote, and then I ran it on the legal pad. Here's what it said, and I'll give it to you straight the way I gave it to myself. Coming in my Social Security, which is about $2,150 a month, I took it at my full retirement age, 66, didn't claim it early, never believed in leaving money on the table, and then a little annuity from my years at the firm, about $650 a month, so call it $2,800 a month, reliable, rain or shine. Sitting behind that, I sold the house in Tyler. Got about $175,000 for it, and I made myself a rule in ink that money is the cushion. I do not spend the cushion. The cushion is what lets a careful man sleep. Now the other side of the pad, and here's where I surprised myself. I'd assumed everybody assumes that if you're going to do a thing like this, you go where it's cheapest. And Thailand's got cheaper places than Bangkok, a lot cheaper. But I didn't want cheapest. I'm 74, not 34. I wanted the big. Hospitals close, the ones that turn out to be some of the finest in the world. I wanted a train I could ride instead of a car I'd have to stop driving someday. And if I'm honest, and I'm trying to be, I wanted the city that got into me at 20, not a substitute for it. So I wrote Bangkok at the top, and I built the budget honest, even padded it a little, because a budget you have to be a saint to hit is a lie you tell yourself. And when I totaled that column and drew the line under it and did the subtraction I have done for other people 10,000 times. I sat back in that kitchen chair in the quiet house and I said out loud to nobody, well, I'll be. It worked, not by a hair, comfortably. I'll walk you through every line of it, because you deserve the actual figures and not a feeling. But first I called my son. Dale's a good boy, practical, like his mother. And he said what a practical person says. He said, Dad, come on. You're 72 years old. You had one vacation there when Nixon was president. You don't speak the language? What in the world are you going to do when something goes wrong 8,000 miles from home? And I said, son, I've thought about that harder than you have. Give me 1 month. I'm not selling the house. Sight unseen. I'm going over there for 1 month at full price, and I'm going to check my own numbers with my own feet on the ground. And if the pad's wrong, I'll come home and never mention it again. He got quiet. Then he said, you already sound like you've decided. I hadn't, not yet, but I'll tell you, a careful man saying, give me 1 month, is a careful man who's already halfway on the plane. I flew over in the spring, which I later found out is the hot season, which is a little like scheduling your first swim during a hurricane. But I wanted to test it at its worst. If the numbers and I could survive Bangkok in April, we could survive anything. I stepped out of that airport at near midnight and 50 years fell off me in one breath. The heat, that same big warm hand on the back of my neck. I stood there on the curb with my one suitcase, 72 years old, grinning like the fool in the photograph. Then a taxi fella tried to charge me about 1,000 baht, call it $30 for a ride the meter. Would have run for maybe half that, and 50 years fell right back on, because getting gently fleeced at the airport is its own kind of Bangkok welcome. I'd read about it on the forum. I said, meter please, in the 2 words of Thai I'd practiced. And he laughed and shrugged and ran the meter, and it came to about 350 baht, a bit over $10, and we were both fine. First lesson, no charge. They'll try, and you smile and you say meter and nobody's a villain. I'd rented for that month a little 1-bedroom up in a neighborhood called Ari, not the flashy expat part, a leafier, older, local sort of place, coffee shops and a wet market and families. I picked it off the forum, on purpose. I wanted to see if I could live where people actually lived, not in a resort with a lobby. I gave myself one job that month, spend like it's real, and write down every baht. So I did. I rode the BTS, the Sky Train, this clean, quiet, elevated train that slides over the whole snarled. Mess of the traffic, and I about wept at how easy it was. A man my age, no car, no ice, no parking, tap a card and go. I ate off the carts. Mu ping, they call it, little pork skewers, grilled over charcoal, with a bag of sticky rice, and I stood on a corner eating it at 7 in the morning thinking a Texan has no business being this happy about breakfast. I found cowman guy, chicken and rice, so plain it sounds like nothing, and I could eat it every day of my life. I got a bowl of boat noodles down by a canal, so good I ordered a second one, and the lady looked delighted and a little concerned. And when the jet lag had me wide awake at 2 in the morning that first week, there was a 7-Eleven on the corner. There's always a 7-Eleven on the corner, and a Family Mart right across from it, lit up bright as noon, and I'd shuffle down in the dark and get a toasted ham and cheese off the little grill and a cold water. And the kid behind the counter got used to the old farang and his 2 in the morning toasty and would have it, going when he saw me at the door. Small thing, but you stack up enough small things and a place starts to have a shape to it, a place that half expects you. And I wrote it all down. Every cart, every train tap, every water bill, and every beer singa, cold enough to hurt in that heat. It's practically a medicine. Mornings I couldn't sleep past 5:30 anyway, never could, 40 years of it, so I'd walk Ari's little lanes at dawn, and that's when I'd see the monks. Barefoot, orange robes, walking slow with their alms bowls, and the shopkeepers kneeling down on the sidewalk to give them rice, hands together, heads bowed, quiet as a church and nothing like one. I'd stand back respectful and just watch. I'm not a religious man particularly, but there's something about a whole neighborhood starting its day on its knees being generous that does a thing to you. I want to be honest about the hard parts, because the honest parts are the only ones worth your trust. The heat is not a joke. April in Bangkok will lay you out if you're proud about it. I learned to move like the locals, slow, early, or late, aircon in the worst of the afternoon, which is a line in the budget and not a small one. Some days the air was bad, hazy, and my chest knew it. The traffic, if you're ever in a car, is a kind of parked. And the language, I'll get into that because that was the real mountain, and I hadn't hit the worst of it yet. But here's the moment I knew the month was going to end with me signing a lease. It was maybe 2 weeks in. Ordinary evening. I'd figured out the little wet market near the apartment, and there was a woman there sold fruit, and by that second week she'd started just having my mango ready, the good one, ripe. She'd see me coming down the row and reach for it before I said a word and hand it over and say something I didn't understand, and I'd say, "Kop kun crap, thank you," the one phrase I had cold, and she'd laugh every time like I'd done a trick. That's all. A woman saving me a piece of fruit. But I stood there in that market with a warm mango in a bag, 72 years old, and I thought, somebody here already knows what I like. 2 weeks. Back home it had been 5 years of pouring coffee for nobody. I went back to the apartment and I got out the legal pad, the same yellow pad from the Tyler kitchen. I'd carried it 8,000 miles like a Bible. And I started copying my receipts into the column to see if the month I'd actually lived matched the month I'd predicted. Now this is the chapter where I earn my old job title, so bear with the bookkeeper while he shows you the ledger. This is the part your kitchen table self actually wants. I lived that whole month on real prices and wrote down every baht, and then I built the going forward monthly budget off what I'd actually spent, not off a brochure. Here's the column, and every figure is a real Bangkok. Number, not a number from a dream. Rent. The 1-bedroom in Ari, decent, clean, aircon, an elevator, walk to the train, 28,000. Bought a month, about $850. Could I have paid half that further out, or in a cheaper city? Absolutely. I chose this. Write that down. I chose it. Electric and water, with running the aircon like a sane man and not a martyr, about 3,500 baht. $100, near enough. Food. And this is the one that still makes me laugh. Eating well, carts and markets and cooking a little and going out plenty, about 18,000 baht a month. Call it $545. I ate. Better there in a month than I'd eaten in Tyler in a year, and it cost me less than my grocery bill used to. Getting around the train, the little motorbike taxis for a short hop, a grab car when it's pouring about, 3,500 baht, another $100, and no car insurance, no gas, no tires, no oil changes, no nothing. My truck back home had cost me more than that just to sit in the driveway and disapprove of me. Phone and internet, the both of them, about 1,200 baht, 30-some dollars. It embarrassed me, frankly, thinking what I'd paid the cable company for the privilege of being angry at it. Then the grown-up lines. Health insurance and my medicines, I put 9,000 baht a month against that, around $275, and I'll say more about the health picture in a minute because it's the one older folks get wrong. And a miscellaneous line, another 9,000 baht, because a budget without a fudge factor is a fairy tale, and I've audited enough fairy tales to know. Draw the line. Add it up. About 72,000 baht a month, all in, which at roughly 33 baht to the dollar comes to about $2,200. And coming in, remember, 2,800 a month, reliable. So I sat there, same pad, new kitchen, same subtraction, and it came out to about $600 left over. Every month, on top of a life I could not afford the American version of, and the 175,000 from the house still sitting in the cushion, untouched, where I swore it'd stay. I checked it 3 times. Old habit. It kept coming out the same. The numbers didn't care how unlikely it felt. The numbers never do. That's the whole reason I've trusted them my whole life over how a thing feels. Now the visa, because doing this right is the entire point, and this is where people get sloppy. I'm 74, so I did what they recommend for us older ones. There's a route where you go over on a regular entry and convert to a retirement type visa inside the country, a nano they call it, and for a fella my age it's cleaner than the from home version, which comes bundled with a mandatory insurance requirement that gets expensive and finicky. I want to be square with you. The exact insurance rules vary by which office and which route, and they change, and you verify them yourself with the actual consulate you do. Not take a YouTube fella's word for it, not even this one. To qualify, I parked 800,000 baht, about $24,000 in a Thai bank account, seasoned the required number of months from my own money, from the cushion, and it's still mine. It just sits there, proving I'm not going to be a burden. There's an income way to qualify too. 65,000 baht a month, a shade under $2,000, which my 2,800 clears, but the deposit was cleaner for me. Then there's the housekeeping you cannot forget. A report of your address every 90 days, an annual renewal that runs about 1,900 baht, and write this on your hand, a re-entry permit before you. Leave the country, or your visa evaporates while you're gone. Rookie mistake. I read about it 100 times on that forum, and I still nearly did it. More on that later. Opening the bank account to hold that deposit was its own small adventure, a whole morning of forms and photocopies, and a very patient young teller who'd plainly done this for 100 confused Farangs before me, sliding papers across the counter and tapping where to sign, the two of us getting it done on smiles and hand signals, and her 3 words of English against my 3 words of Thai. I walked out with a passbook, and actual paper passbook, stamped, which pleased the old bookkeeper in me more than I care to admit, and a Thai bank account with my seasoning money sitting in it, doing its quiet job of proving to a government I'd be no trouble to anybody. While I was there that month, I also went and got a full physical at one of the big international hospitals. Bumrungrad marble floors, English-speaking doctors, the works. Cost me about $40 for the visit. 40. Back home, that conversation starts with the word deductible and ends with you not going. 2 weeks after that, I flew back to Tyler, and I only went back to pack. I don't want to sell you the easy version because the easy version is a lie and you'd smell it. The move itself went fine. I'd done my homework. Careful men get rewarded at the paperwork stage. It was after the paperwork that it got hard, and I'd be doing you a disservice not to tell you. Because here's the thing they don't put in the brochure. It is entirely possible to be lonelier in a city of 11 million people than in an empty house in Tyler, maybe more. In Tyler, at least, the loneliness knew my name. In Bangkok, that first month living there for real, not the scouting month, the real one, when the adventure wears off and it's just your life now, I'd sit in that RE apartment in the evening and hear a whole city out the window, a million suppers being cooked, motorbikes, somebody's television, and not one soul in it knew I existed. I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call Dolores, 5 years gone, and remember. That's a specific kind of low, and I sat in the bottom of it a few nights and wondered if my son had been right and I'd made an expensive fool of myself. And the language. Lord, the language. I need to correct something you may have heard, because it cuts both ways. You'll hear people say, everybody in Bangkok speaks English, they do not. And you'll hear people say, nobody does, and you'll be helpless. That's not true either. In the hospitals and the expat spots and with the young folks, there's plenty of English. At my wet market, at the little repair shop, with the fella fixing my aircon with most of the actual daily texture of a life, not much at all. And Thai is hard. It's a tonal language. The same little word means 5 different things depending on whether your voice goes up or down or sits flat, and I've got a flat Texas voice that goes exactly one place. I said something to the fruit lady once I thought meant beautiful morning, and by her face I'd said something else entirely. So I did the only thing a stubborn old bookkeeper can do. I made it a project. I learned my greetings cold. Sawasdee crap, hello, kap kun crap, thank you, the numbers, the food words. I carried a little notebook, a different one than the money pad, and I wrote down a word a day. I made 100 mistakes a week, and I let people laugh because their laughing was never mean, and a man who can't be laughed at can't learn anything. I taped my little word list to the refrigerator, right next to the money pad, and quizzed myself over supper, like a schoolboy. Rice, water, left, right, straight ahead, how much? Too expensive, that one I practiced. Hardest, being who I am. And slowly, one word at a time, the wall got a door put in it. And I got lucky in the way you make your own luck by staying put long enough to be recognized. There's a lady in my building, Kunganda, 60s, sharp as a tack, a little English and a lot of patience, and she sort of adopted the confused old farang on the 4th floor. Farang is what they call us Westerners, and it took me a while to hear it as just a word and not a wall. Kunganda would knock and hand me a bag of something from her kitchen and stand there while I ate it and pronounced it wrong and correct me, and that little unglamorous back and forth over weeks was the bridge. Community over there doesn't fall on you all at once like it might in a small Texas church. It builds slow by you showing up in the same places and being decent until one day you're not a stranger anymore. They've even got a word for the kind of considerate restraint that shapes it. Kringjai A, not wanting to impose. It's real. You earn your way in. Suits me. I never trusted anything that came easy anyway. Then 2 things went wrong close together, and I'll tell you both because they're the honest ones. One, the bureaucracy nearly got me the thing I'd read about 100 times. I got busy, got comfortable, and clean forgot how close I was to my 90-day reporting, and on top of it I'd booked a quick trip up north without, you guessed it, the re-entry permit. Caught it 2 days out in a cold sweat and spent a sweaty morning at the immigration office fixing what a careful man shouldn't have let slip. Lesson relearned. This is a paperwork country and it does not care about your feelings or your age. 2, it flooded. September, a downpour like God tipped a bucket and the street out front of my building went to a brown river in about an hour, up over the curb, motorbikes throwing wakes. I stood in my doorway watching it and thought, what in the world have you done, Warren? And then Kunganda splashed by under an umbrella, saw my face, laughed, and said the phrase I'd hear 1,000 times in this country, my pen, my pen, my. Never mind, it's all right, no worries, and she was right. By evening it had drained off like it never happened, and something in me drained off with it. My son Dale finally came over about 8 months in, and I want to tell you about that visit, because if you've got a skeptical kid and the good ones are all skeptical, that's them loving you. This is the part you'll want to hear. He did not come to approve. He came, I think, to assess, to see how bad it was and start planning how to get his old father home before something terrible happened. He got off that plane with his shoulders up around his ears, jet-lagged and braced, looking at everything like an auditor, which I'll grant you he comes by, honestly. First day he was tense. Too hot, too loud, too foreign, worried about the water, worried about me. I didn't argue with any of it. You don't argue a person into a place. You just live in front of them and let them watch. So I took him around my actual life. Not the tourist reel my life. The wet market, where the fruit lady now not only saves me the mango, but has opinions about my son, handsome, too skinny. The coffee spot where they start my order when I walk in. Kunganda, who fed him until he begged for mercy. I took him on the river, the Chao Phraya, the big brown artery of the whole city, and you can ride a public boat down it for pennies past the temples. past Waterroon standing up out of the water like something from a dream, and I watched my practical son go quiet at the rail. And the thing that finally got him, it wasn't the temples. It was a bowl of boat noodles at a canal side stall, plastic stool, no English on the menu or anywhere near it, and he took a bite and stopped and looked at me and said, okay, this is really good, Dad. And then, a minute later, quieter, watching the old ladies cook and the kids run and the whole ordinary evening of a neighborhood that had somewhere along the line become mine. You're not lonely here. It wasn't a question. I said, no, son, I was lonely there. He came around. Not all at once. He's mine after all. But he came around. Now he calls. And instead of when, are you coming to your senses? It's how's Koonganda, how's the fruit lady, save me a spot in December. The night before he flew home, we sat up on the little balcony with a couple of cold changs, the city humming, away down below, and he went quiet the way he does right before he says something real. He said Mom would have hated the heat. And I laughed, because it's God's truth. Dolores would have complained about that heat from the Fallon jetway to the pearly gates. And then he said, quieter, but she'd have loved that you did it. And that from my careful, practical son who'd flown 8,000 miles out there to talk his old man back to Texas, that undid me a little out in the dark. We didn't say a whole lot after. Didn't need to. Some ledgers balance without a word said. Let me handle the grown-up worry straight, because Dale asked it and you're thinking it. What about when something really goes wrong? Here's the honest picture, and it's the reason I picked expensive old Bangkok over somewhere cheaper. The big hospitals here, Bumrungrad, Samadavej, Med Park, are genuinely world class, and the routine stuff is so cheap, it's almost funny. A doctor visit runs you somewhere between $25 and $60, cash, walk in. But for the big Sing, you carry private insurance, and I'll be square with you. That insurance climbs as you age, and in my 70s, it is not cheap, and it will only get less cheap, and past a certain age it can get hard to buy at all. I planned around that. I built it into the pad. It's in that health line, and my cushion stands behind it. And Medicare, listen close, because this is where I see folks online get tangled up, and it drives an old bookkeeper crazy. I'm 74. I've been on Medicare since 65 like anybody, but Medicare does not cover you 1 inch outside the United States. Not here, not anywhere. So it's a decision, and I made mine on paper. I keep paying my Part B $202.90 a month this year so that my coverage is alive and waiting if I ever go home for something major, and so I don't get hit with that permanent late penalty for dropping it. Some folks over here drop it. I keep it. That's not me telling you what to do. That's me telling you it's a real line item with a real number, and you decided on purpose, not by accident. One more honest one, and I won't dress it up. I've got grandkids in Dallas, and they're growing up 8,000 miles in a day of flying from me, and I feel that. Video calls are a wonderful thing, and they are not a small pair of arms around your neck. That's the price. Everybody who tells you they left with no price is selling you something. I decided I'd rather be a whole, alive, solvent grandfather they visit somewhere remarkable than a sad one down the street they feel obligated to. Reasonable people would decide it different. That's allowed. But I decided it with my eyes open, and I decided it true. It's been a little over 2 years now. I moved over at 72, I'm 74, and I want to tell you about a Tuesday because it wasn't a big day, and that's the whole point. I got up before the sun. Like always, some things a man doesn't outrun. I made my coffee. 1 cup. I don't pour the second one anymore. I finally quit doing that somewhere in the first year and didn't even notice when. I stopped, which is its own small mercy. I opened the cabinet over the counter to get the filters, and there's that photograph taped up inside the door where I see it every morning. The kid on the long-tail boat in 1972, grinning at something, and I gave him a little nod, like I do. We've come to an understanding, him and me. I walked out into Ari before the heat got its boots on. The monks were out with their bowls, and I know a couple of the shopkeepers now by face, and we nod. The fruit lady had my mango. She said something I actually understood this time, asked about Dale, I think, and I answered in enough broken Thai to make her laugh. And I'll be honest with you, making that woman laugh is one of the great accomplishments of my later life. I rode the train down to the river just to ride it, watch the city slide by underneath me, all that gold and gray and green, 11 million people and me, one of them now, not a tourist, not a ghost, a resident with a 90-day report due and a favorite noodle stall and a neighbor who worries when I look peaked. I stopped at a little spirit house on the corner the way I've started to not praying. Exactly. I wouldn't. You know, the first thing about how just a small nod to something bigger than my arithmetic, a marigold garland, already looped over it, going brown in the heat. 20-year-old me would have laughed himself sick at that. 74-year-old me has learned there's a few things the pad doesn't have a column for. I sat by the chow praya as it got on toward evening, the light going amber the way it does, the boats working, and I did the arithmetic one more time, the way I always will, because that's who I am. Money coming in, a life going out, and a surplus at the bottom. Not a fortune, about $600 a month, but the right side of zero, which back home it had stopped being, and behind it the cushion I've still never touched. The pad was right. 2 years on, the pad is still right. That never stops meaning something to a man who spent his life watching other people's pads come out wrong. So let me answer the question I started with. Why are so many of us doing this? Thousands, quietly, no. Announcement, just gone one day to somewhere warm and far. I don't think it's the palm trees. I think it's the arithmetic, and I think it's the quiet. Because the honest truth is that a whole lot of careful, decent people who did everything right, worked 40 years, paid in, saved what they could, got to the end of it, and found the numbers back home, just quietly stopped working. Not dramatically, just a little worse every month. The light bill and the taxes and the insurance all pulling the same direction, and a big empty country that costs a fortune to be lonely in. And some of us looked up and found there's a place where the same money buys a warm, safe, interesting life, with change left over and a fruit lady who knows your face. That's not running away. Running away is what I'd have been doing if I'd stayed in that quiet house pouring coffee for a woman who's gone, telling myself, someday. I'm not here to tell you to do what I did. I'd be a poor bookkeeper if I told you your numbers came out like mine without ever seeing them. Maybe yours say stay. Staying's a fine answer if it's a true one. But I'll tell you this, from a man who is allergic to wishful thinking and went anyway. Run your actual numbers, not the scared ones, the real ones. You might be a good deal freer than the fear's been telling you. Before I let you go, one last thing, and then I'll leave you be. If any of this landed, if you've got that same itch I had at that kitchen table, wondering if the math could ever work for somebody like you, there's a free tool down in the description, worth your time. The Honest Thailand Retirement Starter Kit, it's called. I didn't make it, and I'm not selling you a single thing. It's just an honest self-check that'll tell you straight whether this is even worth your while. It's as ready to talk you out of it as into it, and a worksheet where you run your own real numbers, city by city, the way I ran mine on that yellow pad. Costs you nothing. And if it tells you to stay right where you are, well, that's an honest answer too, and you'll have it in ink instead of in worry. That's all I've got. Go check your math and take care of yourself.